Let me tell you one of the darkest prison stories ever whispered in American criminal history. 7 armed prison guards beat one man so badly that doctors thought he would never wake up. But before that man even opened his eyes, all 7 guards vanished. No bodies, no witnesses, no arrests, no explanation, and the man they attacked was Harlem's most powerful crime boss, Bumpy Johnson. They thought because he was locked inside a maximum security prison, he was powerless. They thought they could beat him unconscious and walk away. But what they didn't understand was that Bumpy Johnson didn't need to be awake for revenge to happen, because before he opened his eyes, his organization had already erased 7 men from existence. This isn't just a prison story. This is a story about power, about fear, about how some names carry weight, even from behind bars. And today, on Bumpy Johnson Devoting Dark History, I'm going to walk you through the full story, step by step, from the beating to the disappearances, to the chilling message it sent across the entire prison system. Let's begin. Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson wasn't just another gangster, he was Harlem royalty. Born in 1905 and raised in the tough streets of New York City, Bumpy grew up in a world where survival came first and mercy came last. He entered the criminal underworld during the bootlegging era, and by the time Prohibition ended, he had already built a name that people feared and respected. But what made Bumpy different wasn't just money or muscle, it was reputation. People said he had a photographic memory. He could recite pages of Shakespeare without hesitation. He read philosophy in prison cells. He wrote poetry in between street wars. He wasn't the loudest man in the room, but he was usually the smartest. And when it came to business, he was ruthless, calculated, patient, strategic. By the 1940s and early 1950s, Bumpy Johnson controlled major parts of Harlem's numbers racket, oversaw heroin distribution networks, ran protection operations that stretched across neighborhoods. Even powerful Italian mafia families chose partnership over conflict because going to war with Bumpy was bad for business. But more important than money was loyalty. If you worked for Bumpy and stayed solid, he took care of you. If someone crossed you under his protection, he handled it personally. No noise, no drama, just results. That reputation followed him everywhere, from the streets of Harlem to the cold walls of prison, even behind bars. His name still carried weight. In early 1952, Manhattan prosecutors were under pressure. Harlem crime was rising, the press wanted results, politicians wanted headlines, and Bumpy Johnson was the biggest name available. Taking him down meant instant publicity, instant credibility, instant political wins, but the case against him was shaky. Witnesses flipped under pressure, evidence was mostly circumstantial, the trial moved fast, too fast, and everything about it felt stacked against him. Still, the outcome was predictable. Bumpy Johnson was convicted of narcotics conspiracy and sentenced to 15 years. He was sent to Sing Correctional Facility, one of the most brutal maximum security prisons in America. At 48 years old, Bumpy had already survived Alcatraz in the 1930s, but Sing in the 1950s was worse. Violent guards, open racism, savage inmate politics, and a system that rarely punished abuse, especially when the victims were black prisoners. Still, Bumpy didn't resist. He didn't threaten anyone. He didn't make noise. He kept his head down because he planned to appeal his conviction. And in prison, attention is dangerous. The quieter you are, the longer you survive. But there were men inside Sing who didn't care about appeals. They didn't care about justice. They cared about reminding prisoners who really had power. And on November 12, 1952, they decided to remind Bumpy Johnson. Thursday afternoon, November 12, 1952, 2:17 p.m. Sing Prison Workshop. Bumpy Johnson was assigned to carpentry duty, sanding wooden planks that would later become furniture sold by the prison. It was boring work. But boring was good. Boring meant invisible. At around 2:15 p.m., a guard approached him. Officer Thomas Brennan. Johnson. Warden wants to see you. That alone was unusual. Inmates didn't get summoned mid-shift unless something serious had happened. Still, Bumpy stood and followed him. They walked toward the exit. But instead of heading to the administration building, Brennan turned down a side corridor, a storage hallway. No cameras, no inmates, no witnesses. That's when Bumpy stopped. Warden's office is the other way. Brennan smiled. Not friendly, not nervous, predatory. Warden doesn't actually want to see you, he said, but we do. 6 more guards stepped out from doorways. Patrick Sullivan, Michael O'Brien, James McCarthy, Robert Mitchell, Daniel O'Connor, William Donnelly, 7 officers, 1 inmate, all carrying nightsticks, all smiling. This wasn't discipline. This was a message. Bumpy backed against the wall. He calculated. 7 armed men, no weapons, no exits. He couldn't fight, he couldn't run, so he did the only thing he could do. He stood still, didn't plead, didn't beg, didn't show fear, because if he was going to be beaten, he wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of breaking him. One of the guards spoke. You think you're somebody, Johnson. You think you're important. You're nothing, just another black inmate in a cage. And today you're going to learn what happens when inmates forget their place. 2:17 p.m. They attacked. Nightsticks swung. The first blow shattered his shoulder, the second cracked ribs, the third smashed into his arm, then his head. Bumpy dropped, but they didn't stop. They kept swinging, over and over, back, legs, stomach, head again. They weren't just beating him. They were trying to erase him. One final strike caught his skull, and everything went black. Bumpy Johnson collapsed unconscious in a pool of blood. Fractured skull, 3 broken ribs, internal injuries. The guards looked down at him. Brennan nudged him with his boot. No movement. Good. One of them laughed. That'll teach him. They walked away, leaving him there, unconscious, bleeding, possibly dying. About 30 minutes later, another inmate walked into the storage corridor. Gerald Red Patterson, a workshop worker who owed Bumpy his life from years earlier. Red stopped cold when he saw him. Bumpy's face was swollen beyond recognition, blood everywhere, his breathing shallow, uneven, wrong. He looked dead, or close to it. For a moment, Red just stared, because in prison, getting involved in something like this could get you killed. Reporting it could mean retaliation, solitary confinement, or worse. But walking away would guarantee Bumpy died, and Red remembered the day Bumpy had stepped in for him years ago, saved him from a street execution that never made the papers. Debt in that world was real. So Red ran. He found a guard he knew was quietly on Bumpy's payroll, Officer Vincent Duca. He grabbed him fast, spoke low. Urgent. They beat him. Bad. He's unconscious. Duca didn't hesitate. He moved quickly toward the corridor. When Duca saw Bumpy lying there, even he looked shaken. He immediately called for medical assistance. No delay, no paperwork, just urgency. Within minutes, Bumpy was carried to the prison infirmary. The prison doctor examined him carefully. Severe head trauma, skull fracture, 3 broken ribs, multiple contusions. He shook his head. He's comatose. He might not wake up. And if he does, brain damage is possible. The room went quiet. The doctor recommended immediate transfer to an outside hospital, better equipment, better monitoring, but the warden refused. Cold, flat. He stays here. He said, no special treatment. Translation. Let him die. So Bumpy Johnson lay unconscious in a narrow infirmary bed, barely monitored, barely stabilized, his life hanging by a thread, machines humming softly in the background, guards posted outside, thinking the problem had solved itself. But what they didn't understand, what they completely underestimated, was that Bumpy Johnson was never truly alone, even inside prison walls. Even unconscious, he still had people watching. Around 3 p.m., Officer Vincent Duca walked quietly toward a payphone inside Sing Sing. A number had been given to him months earlier. Strict instructions. Only call in an emergency. This qualified. He dialed carefully, watched the hallway, waited. The line picked up. Marcus Webb, Bumpy Johnson's top lieutenant on the outside. Calm voice. Steady. Yeah, Marcus said. Duca lowered his tone. It's Duca, Sing Sing. We've got a serious problem. Silence for half a second. What happened? Marcus asked. No panic, just control. Duca swallowed. 7 guards beat Bumpy unconscious. Nightsticks, skull fracture, broken ribs. He's in a coma. The words hung heavy on the line. Marcus didn't speak for a moment. Then, Is he alive? Duca answered. For now, doctor says he might not wake up. Another pause, longer this time. Who were the guards? Marcus asked. Duca listed every name slowly. Thomas Brennan, Patrick Sullivan, Michael O'Brien, James McCarthy, Robert Mitchell, Daniel O'Connor, William Donnelly. Marcus wrote each one down carefully. No interruptions, no emotion. Good, Marcus said finally. Calm, controlled. You did your job. Then his tone sharpened slightly. Keep eyes on him, and make sure none of those men go near him again. If they try, he paused, stop them. Duca understood exactly what that meant. Understood. Marcus hung up, looked at his watch. 3:05 p.m. Bumpy had been unconscious for 48 minutes. 48 minutes since 7 men decided they could act without consequences. Marcus stood up slowly. He didn't panic, didn't yell, didn't hesitate. He moved. By 3:15 p.m., Marcus had already assembled Bumpy's inner circle. 6 men, the most trusted, the most disciplined, the most loyal. Men who had survived wars on the streets and knew how to move without being seen. The room was quiet when Marcus spoke. 7 guards beat Bumpy unconscious. He said flatly, no emotion, just facts. He might die. The words landed heavy, but nobody reacted. Nobody spoke. Marcus continued, but whether he lives or dies, he paused. Those 7 men are going to disappear before he wakes up. No one questioned it. No one argued. No one hesitated. Because this wasn't anger. This wasn't revenge. This was policy. This was how the organization functioned. If someone touched the boss, they were erased. Period. Marcus leaned forward slightly. I want full information on each guard within 2 hours. He said, addresses, families, daily routines, vehicles. Then he looked at one man. Jerome, that's yours. Jerome nodded instantly. He turned to the rest. Everyone else, your extraction teams. Then slower, colder. All 7 targets disappear tonight. No witnesses, no traces, no bodies. Clean, then one final line. This happens before Bumpy opens his eyes. Every man nodded. Once, no speeches, no questions, no hesitation. They stood up and dispersed. By 5 p.m., Jerome walked back into the room, calm, focused, carrying a folder thick with paper. He placed it on the table without a word. 7 complete files, every detail collected in less than 2 hours. Names, full home addresses, shift schedules, bars they visited after work, dinners they stopped at, who they lived with, wives, children, girlfriends, mothers, the make and model of every car they drove, license plate numbers, habit patterns, everything.